What a fun song, huh? Love banjo. You know what that song could use, Andy? More cowbell. I don't know. For those of you who get that, then that's funny. If you don't, then sorry. Thank you. Appreciate that. Take your Bibles, go with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. We want to dive into this passage and kind of swim around in it in a little bit. Maybe have it change us. I've been praying for us as we wrestle with it today, that it would just kind of remind us of some things, maybe re-invite us into the most excellent way of living. I think we all long for that. We want that. We maybe struggle to figure out what exactly that is. And I think Paul's really hammering something today. We read this in some ways as kind of this passage. But I don't know if the first readers would have read it that way or heard it that way. And so as we dive into this, he looks at the end of chapter 12. He's been talking about spiritual gifts, very last verse. He says this, but eagerly desire the greater gifts. And then you might have a little tag in your Bible that says love, or love is indescribable or indispensable type of love type thing. And then it says this, and now I will show you the most excellent way. And now I will show you the most excellent way. This most excellent way of living is what the Greek is literally saying. This best path that you can choose is what he's saying. I will show you the most excellent way. I'm not going to just tell you about it. I'm going to show you. The Greek word there for show is this idea of I'm going to explain this. I'm going to explore this in a way that you can see it, in a way that you'll get it. How many of you grew up reading instruction manuals? Yes, all two of you. Most people in the world look at an instruction manual, and look, if you're an engineer, I know that you've worked like buku hours on this thing. There's 60 of you putting it together. I read an instruction manual and my brain hurts, and I just put it down. And then you kind of go into this other category of person where you just kind of wing it, and you're like, well, 60 engineers worked on it, but I got this. And so you kind of work on it type thing. Maybe you shock yourself trying to take something apart or whatever it is. And then you kind of admit failure. And then, because of the age in which we live, we can go to something else called YouTube. And you go to YouTube, and it doesn't just tell you how to do something. It actually shows you how to do something. It actually shows you how to do and take apart, or how to assemble, how to fix something, and you can see it. It shows you. And here's what we innately know: showing is better than telling. Now, if you're really lucky like I am, you could marry someone that actually knows how to look at YouTube and knows how to fix things. Like my wife is the one that put our grill together. She's the one that fixed our lamp. And I say what you want. I don't care. Okay? I got 3 kids. I got nothing to prove. I'm good. So, I am comfortable in my own skin. And so, I just got lucky. And I married someone that understands how to do this stuff. And it's fantastic. If I tried to do it, I wouldn't end up on YouTube. I'd end up on America's Funniest Home Videos or something like that. Paul says, I'm going to show you the most excellent way to live. And here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to just read this passage to you. And then I'd like for us to kind of dig into it a little bit. And so here's what he says. And now I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I am only a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but I have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love is not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. How many of you have been to a wedding where you've heard that read? And the feeling is what you're feeling right now. Yes, that's what love is. And it's just this simple, kind of feeling, sensation. But friends, I don't think the 1 Corinthians, first hearers of this letter, felt that way. In fact, I think they were deeply bugged by this. I think they had more tension and more questions than any kind of awe feeling. This irked them. Because Paul is not just listing out a list of virtues for you and I to wrestle with and somehow become a virtue management, kind of go into a virtue management mode. Paul's challenging them. He's calling them out. And what he's saying is, look, you've gotten things sideways. You have fallen victim to the subtle slips of life, and it's taken you down another path and another path, but it's not the path of the most excellent way to live. And I'm going to show you what that is. You've gotten sideways. See, he's speaking to the people of Corinth, that people of Corinth, you understand the backdrop would be a lot like New York City. Anyone been in New York? Anyone grew up in New York, maybe Chicago? Think of a big city where professionalism is the kind of the lay of the land. That you're a professional. You go there to make it. You don't, just grow up in this area because your great-great-great-grandfather lived there and it's just kind of your homestead. That's like places in Iowa, okay? It's you go to New York or you go to Hollywood or you go to Chicago because you want to make it. And that's the people that are there in Corinth. They've got this unbridled passion for success and drive to make. They're ambitious people. They're creative people. They're talented people. They are people that have a diversity to them. And in this hub of great commerce and trade and business, some are beginning to follow and think about and becoming curious about this guy Jesus that Paul began to establish a church there. Now he's got this church of professionals that have this bent to them. These are the movers and shakers of the world. And Paul's writing to them. They are gifted and they are talented. They are the professionals of their culture. And often what happens when you are a professional is everything gets boiled down to what you produce and how you perform. And everything is filtered through that. That's how you're successful. It's about production. It's about accomplishments. In your personal life, well, that can kind of get covered up. I'm really glad that we've overcome that in our world today. Paul's looking directly at this group of people, and he's saying to them, some of you are the most talented people I know, and your character stinks. You're gifted, but your character doesn't measure up. This wouldn't have been a moment. This would have been a whoa, wait, them are fighting words. Well, you're calling me out. Yeah, he is. He's challenging them. He's saying, look, you've slipped into these different paths, and it's not the most excellent way. Your giftedness is great, but your character, not so much. In fact, he's been saying that all throughout the book. He says, look, I don't care how successful you are, how rich you are, how talented you are. If you are irritable and selfish and vain and self-absorbed and angry and impatient and anxious and prideful, then you are missing it. Period. That's what Paul's saying. So we read this at weddings. And we read this, and it's okay to read that there. But you have to understand this would have been different than what they would have expected. He's saying, look, you've got something. You're hiding behind trying to be this professional spiritual person. But you've got to allow love to be formed in you. God's character, his heart has to be formed and shaped and transform you inside out. Love must become the overflow of your life, not just a virtue that you tack on and you try to manage how it appears and how it comes across. That's where you're getting sideways. It's your character that must change in order for that to happen. This is not about behavior modification or virtue management. This is about God shaping and changing your character. And then in this text, he gives two different things of saying, here's the paths that you're taking that aren't where you need to go. And here's the one path that you need to take. And so that's what I want to spend the rest of our time unpacking. He says, look, to have a godly heart and character formed in you is vital. It's the most excellent way. And some of you have subtly slipped into this idea of a different way. And you're focusing on that. Look at verse 2. We'll just kind of unpack this a little bit. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. Paul's saying, look, you are talented. You are so gifted. And what's happened is you begin to hide behind your gifts and talents, thinking that it's your gifts and talents and the accomplishments, what you produce, how you perform, that begins to change your character. And the truth is, you can be gifted by God and not be changed by God. You can have gifts and talents and abilities and still have the same heart. And what God's interested in is changing your heart, friends. That's what Paul's saying to them. Look, you can have the ability, the faith to move mountains. This isn't a faith, if you look in the Greek, it's not this idea of salvation faith, not this saving element, right relationship with God faith. It's this faith that can move mountains. It's this activity, this the ability to do something. This is a leadership gift. This is the ability, what is leadership? To rally a group of people who would not surmount an obstacle on their own, but to get them to go do it. And what he's saying is you have great leaders. And you're exercising your leadership, but you are hiding behind it. And you're not having your heart changed. And you're making it all about this show and about this performance. And you look good. But I see your heart. All throughout Corinthians, you have to understand Corinthians is not this lovely book. It's a challenging letter to this church that's caught up and gotten sideways. And Paul is saying character is everything. It's not about your accomplishments. It's not about your giftedness or your talents. You can have the gift of prophecy, the ability to understand what God is saying in the scriptures and to hear directly from him, to pass on to other people, and still miss having God's heart shaped and formed within you. Wow. And if you do all of that, and if that's what you're doing, you're nothing. Can you feel the weight of that? I'm nothing? Paul's saying you've gotten sideways. Individuals and churches can begin defining themselves by what they accomplish and what they're doing and how they're using their gifts and talents. And all the while, who they are isn't changing. Paul's saying your doing is great, but your being stinks. You're still irritable. You're still self-absorbed. You're still all about you. You're missing it, is what Paul is saying. Being gifted by God is not the same. Maybe a great question to ask yourself is this: am I hiding behind my abilities and the ways that I've been able to bless other people? Am I hiding behind my talents? And yet underneath, I'm still joyless and fretful and always feeling slighted. My ego is no different. I give up easily. I'm harsh. I keep a record of wrong. I could tell you who wronged me. And Paul's saying, if that's you, watch out, watch out. You're not having your heart changed. And the whole point is you've got to have your heart changed. It's easy to mistake talent for character. And they are not the same. Paul's pointing to a couple different ways that the Corinthian people have gotten sideways. And he begins to look and say, look, it's about your inner heart. It's about your inner character. You've got to change. Remember look all the way back to chapter 1 of Corinthians, verse 12 and 13. He says this. He's saying, look, you're caught up in stuff that just, it doesn't even matter. I don't understand why you're sideways here, Paul's saying. Like what I mean is this: one of you says I follow Paul, another says I follow Apollos, another says I follow Cephas, still another I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized into the name of Paul? You say, no. You've allowed your talents And you've allowed your giftedness and your professionalism to take you down a path to thinking that it's about your accomplishments and how you produce and how you perform that makes God love you. And you're missing it, Paul's saying. It's not about that. It's not this idea. In fact, you read through the description of what love is, verses 4 through 6, 7 there in chapter 13. And we read it as a list of adjectives. In Greek, it's literally a list of verbs. This is what love looks like. This is what love does. This is who you're becoming, he's saying. It's interesting that you read through that list and almost every single one of those words that he's mentioning has appeared elsewhere in this book as something that they were not. As examples of saying, look, you're not. You're not kind. You're not patient. And he's calling them out, and it's a challenge. This is a challenge. And he's saying, look, you've taken this path that says, it's about what I accomplish. And he's saying, no, that's not the same as having God's character and his heart shaped and formed within you. Maybe a second one. Look at verse 3 of chapter 13. He says this, if I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but I have not love, I gain nothing, this time he says. It's almost like he's listening to this different voice or group of people that says, look, Paul, some people here are just so caught up in these gifts that you can see, these leadership gifts and these gifts of up front, and they put them up front, and it's like this Christian glitz, and these things are what people are focusing on. And what he's saying is, no. Here's the deal. What people are saying there to Paul is, look, it's really about how you serve. It's about what you do for the kingdom. It's about what you do to help other people. And Paul looks at that and says, no. It's not about what you do. Because here's the truth, what he's saying, is some of you have got caught up and you are serving and you are giving and you are doing it and it blesses people and it helps people and that's great. But the reason you're doing it is to try to fill a void in you. You have given away your money. In fact, you've surrendered your body to the flames. He's using just a dramatic example of saying, I'm giving everything I got, but you're doing it to fill your own self-worth. You're doing it to gain attention and to gain approval that, hey, I did this. Now people will notice me. Now God will take and pay attention to me because I've done this for him. And what Paul is saying is you've subtly slipped down a different path where it may not be about your giftedness. Now it's become about you doing good things in some way in order to gain God's approval or to gain his attention or to acquire something from God. You've gained nothing. This Greek word, the word gain there in Greek is literally this idea of to merit something. I'm doing this in order to get something, to merit something, to gain something. And you can be incredibly virtuous in how you live your life. You can be incredibly moral in how you live your life and still have it all be about you and about attention on you. And what Paul is saying is, you're missing it. See, a definition of love is serving others. It's serving other people instead of yourself. We looked at that a little bit last week. And it's not serving others in order to get something. It's just serving because it's an overflow of your heart. It's an overflow of the love that you're experiencing. That's why you do it. What Paul is saying is you've gotten sideways here. You become generous in order to try to count. And you really, truly have to serve out of a full heart, not an empty heart that you're trying to fill. So this isn't an passage. This is, whoa. He's nailing them right between the eyes. It's hard to feel and to sense. Wait a minute, I can use all my gifts and try to accomplish a lot and still be nothing? Really? Yeah. Well, yeah, I can give away all this stuff and do things for other people and surrender myself to doing good things and still gain nothing? Yeah. That's the subtle slip down these other paths. And then you have this verse 1. gongs and cymbals. What does that mean? It doesn't even seem to fit in this text, and yet that's what he starts with. Verse 1, he says this, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. What? What Paul is saying, he's speaking to these Corinthian people that live in a context in their city of professionalism, of drivenness, of ambition, surrounded by pagan temples. And so people who are coming out of pagan worship and worshiping false gods, and well, what do you do when you're in pagan worship, and how do you try to get your God's attention? Well, you have parades and you have pizzazz. You've got to awaken your God, to get your God's approval and to get your God's attention. And so you do elaborate things. You actually begin to live your life in a way that just makes sound. God, pay attention to me. I give stuff away. I'm doing these things for you. See how devout I am. Just listen to that ring. Let me ask you, isn't it true that in certain times in our spiritual journey, whether you've been walking with Christ for a long time or maybe you're here checking it out, that we can subtly slip into the idea of doing things? Somehow, this gong to get God's attention and approval and affection. And here's what Paul is saying. Friends, you already have it. You already have it. It's not something you can achieve. It's not something you can attain in your own effort. You already have his love, his attention, his approval. He loves you. And the only way to get God's heart and character begin to shape and change you is not by performing, it's not by producing, it's just by spending time with the living Christ. Because you already have it. Everything you need, you have. Jesus accomplished it. You don't have to earn it. And that's what Paul is driving home. The foundation of faith isn't in your efforts or good deeds. It's God's love is available to those who will humble themselves to simply accept it. And we don't like that. In fact, some of you sit here and go, it can't be that simple. And I say, why not? Why not? That's what drives you crazy, because it is so simple. That's what bugs you. God's wisdom is not like our wisdom, friends. And his ways are not our ways. And you can spend your whole life trying to figure it out and to see it bigger than what it really is, and maybe it's really just that simple. Maybe the gospel is that simple. It's available to those who will accept it. You have to humble yourself. And that's the challenge. And you have to humble yourself on a daily basis. It's not about me trying to beef up energy and try to go do great things. I just live wrapped in his grace and wrapped in his love. How many of you have flown on a plane before? You know the power that is there at takeoff. That as you begin to taxi down the runway and begin to take off, the power, the immense power that's there. I love what Dallas Willard says. He says this: Christians should burn grace like a 747 taken off every morning. Grace is not just a one and done, sealed, now you've got your ticket, you'll go to heaven. Grace is this fuel for life. It's living, embraced and fueled by his love and his grace all the while. And every day, experiencing that in fresh and new ways and looking to him. See, Paul is personifying love here. He's not giving a list of adjectives or a list of virtues for you and I to go say, okay, this is what we got to do today. I got to muster up enough energy just to go do this. That's not what Paul is saying. Paul, very specifically, is personifying love. He's pointing to someone. Guess who? It's the church answer. Jesus. He's personifying love. He's pointing to someone. So he says, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Paul is pointing to Jesus. There's the love that you need to have fuel your heart. There's the living Christ that you need to spend time with. Because only spending time with the living Christ will begin to shape and change your inner man, your inner person. And that's what God's concerned about. Will that enable you and fuel you to do good things? Yeah. Will that enable you and fuel you to use your gifts and talents? Yeah. But it's out of an overflow. It's out of a fullness of heart in which you exercise and do that. That's what Paul is saying. Paul is not giving a list of guidelines for us to aspire to and somehow go into this virtue management. He's saying you can't change yourself, and that's what we struggle with. We like to say, well, if I just give away more things, if I just do more good, if I just use my talents more and accomplish more, then I will own changing myself. And Paul's saying, no, no, no. Jesus is the only one who can begin to change you. He's the one that's got to be the fuel of your life. Real love is something that meets you and picks you up and changes you. There's a Professor Harlow, his theory, he did a study with primates that said, okay, if we just do survival care and we take away all intimacy needs and kind of anything from their mothers, and it's just, we're going to give them the basics of what they need, what will happen? And they began to see that these primates would not thrive in life. They were struggling in life. And child psychologists even began to point this out and to say this is about this idea of nurture, this idea of having affection and being with someone and having them care for you and express that in ways. You need that early on. And if you don't get it, then you're going to not thrive. You're going to struggle in life. And many of you who've maybe gone through adoption have seen that. Because here's what we know to be true. In order to be a person who loves, you have to be shown love. We learn to love by being loved. We learn to love by being loved. When you're surrounded by love, well, then you begin to know how to show it. You begin to know how to live that out. And what Paul is saying, this agape love. The agape love of God is already yours, friends. So he goes through this list. He says, this is Jesus. This is his love for you. So can I read it a little bit with this in mind? We see Jesus in this. Love is patient. In Greek, it's this idea of love suffers long. It can be hurt and it won't retaliate. Where does Jesus do that? My God, why have you forsaken me? And he takes on the cross for your sin and for my shortcomings too. And he says, I'm here for you. Love does not keep records of wrongs. He hangs on the cross and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Love always protects, it always hopes. And he turns to the thief on the cross and says, today you'll be with me in paradise. At the very last breath, I'm protecting and taking care of you because you turned to me. Love perseveres. It is finished. Here's a man who's beaten, stripped naked, and left alone. And he refuses to die until he says, it is finished. What I came to do, I've now done. Period. he persevered. Love never fails. He says in Matthew, I will never forsake you. I'll never leave you. And the man who beat death and who beat hell, who now stands in heaven, interceding on your behalf, says, you can count on me. I will not fail you. Paul is personifying love. Maybe a couple of simple takeaways and then a little reflection exercise for us. One is this: external motivators aren't enough. You need a new internal power. That's what Paul is saying. These external motivators of trying to do good things or try to use your skills and abilities and talents in order to get God's attention, to get approval, to get something that's not enough for you to become the loving kind of person, to have God's heart and character shaped within you. That's not enough. You can't go that way. That's not the most excellent way. So don't get sidetracked in that. I learned to love like God by being loved by the living Christ. Over and over. It's going back to that. Maybe this leads into the second one. It's just recharge and reflect. You've got to recharge on God's love for you. I have friends that have a new Nissan Leaf car. That's the zero emission car. I don't know if they can even make it to Phoenix and back, but you have to plug it in at night. And so my friend says, well, before I go to bed, I just kind of plug the car in. There's no gas. You can't, if you run out of power, there's nothing to fuel it with. You've got to get electricity. You've got to recharge that. And maybe that's what Paul's saying here. His friends, we have got to continually recharge by the ultimate love of the universe. God's love, expressed through Christ. This is love. And you've got to recharge with that. And it's not just recharge one time, okay, I prayed a prayer and now I'm a Christian and now I can move forward. No. What he's saying is all the time. Because it's easy to slip into this path of, okay, well, I did that and now I'm going to go do these things. And now I'm going to go live this way. And now I'm going to go just be good. And he's saying, no, this isn't about virtue management. This is about recharging over and over and over again in the life and love of Jesus. God's love is not achievable, but it is available. It's not something I can go and achieve and attain on my own. It's not like I go to Peter Piper Pizza and I get enough tickets and finally I can get the really big prize that's there. It's not that I do enough good things and I work really hard and I use my skills and talents enough that I finally get the one big thing I want, and that's a right relationship with God. No. It's not attainable, but it is available to those who will humbly accept it. It's already there. God's love for you does not depend on what you attempt or what you achieve or what you acquire. It's simply accepting that. We have all the trappings of the Corinthians, all the trappings of what Christendom is to be. And we can get busy doing and forget that God is in the business of changing who we are, which will overflow in what we do. And we get that backwards at times. This is about spending time with the living Christ. And so here's how I'd like to end today. Sometimes we end with a song. Sometimes we'll leave here with just, a bounce in our step. But here's what I'd like to do today. It's just in the quietness and space of your own seat for just a couple minutes. I'd like to offer you an opportunity just to spend time with the living Christ. Do you want power in your life? Well, it's not about you creating it. It's about leaning back in to Jesus. And so I'd like to read 1 Corinthians 13. But I'd like to substitute a word here. See, 1 John tells us these words. Dear friends, let us love one another, because love comes from God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Fully expressed, we see, in the life of Jesus. Paul is personifying Jesus as love. Here's what love looks like. Here's what love is. Here's what love does. Here's what you need to lean back into to recharge all the time. And so I'd like to read it instead of the word love with just the word Jesus. And I'd like for that just to wash over you a little bit and then give you just a second or so to let you reflect on that. So if you want to close your eyes and listen, that's fine. Not in a hurry. Here's what Paul says. And now I will show you the most excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not Jesus, I'm only a resounding gong, clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I have not Jesus, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but I have not Jesus, I gain nothing. Jesus is patient. Jesus is kind. He does not envy. He does not boast. He's not proud. He's not rude. He's not self-seeking. Jesus is not easily angered. He keeps no record of wrongs. Jesus does not delight in evil, but Jesus rejoices with the truth. Jesus always protects, always trusts, always hopes. Jesus always perseveres. Jesus never fails. So maybe with your eyes closed for just a moment, reflect on that. How does it move your heart? Does it? That Jesus' love is already available to you. Maybe you've taken him up on that offer. Maybe you're still questioning. How does it move your heart to know that Jesus loves like that? That Jesus is kind with you? He doesn't have to be, but he is. He's kind with you. He's patient. That he can protect. He can help you persevere. That Jesus won't fail you. So you take a moment just with God. Maybe offer a prayer of praise or thanksgiving. Maybe God's been nudging your heart and you want to own that and say, God, I need you to shape me. I need to be recharged by you. What word sticks out to you? Father, we want to be a people the best we know how, who don't get sideways, thinking it's about our gifting and what we accomplish or what we go and do. But we are a people that simply spend time with a living Christ, who then empowers us, recharges us to go reflect that kind of love to a world that's starving for that kind of love. We're so confused in our culture. What love's really like. So help us be recharged by your love on a continual and fresh daily basis, knowing that you are the one that empowers life change. You are the one that molds our character. And you in turn are the one that can use our gifts and use our abilities to do good things, to make a difference in this world. But it starts with you, spending time with you. Thank you for the words of Paul, the challenge that they are. May it lead us forward to the most excellent way of living. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you stand with me for a closing blessing? We'll be on through our day. I'd like just to end how Paul ends, chapter 13. Paul says these words, and now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is what? Friends, may your faith be strengthened. May you be fueled by a hope that is yours. And may his love embrace you continually, change you in the process to reflect to a world that needs to see it. It's grace and peace to you.